Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching a brand new edition of Policy Watch with me, Frank Pereira. The number of financially stressed corporate entities were higher in FY17 as per a report in the Business Standard. In FY17, 85 firms had inadequate profits, up from 67 companies in FY16. In a case of inadequate profits, interest payments of a firm are higher than its operating profit. The combined operating profit of the 85 firms stands at 120 billion rupees, lower as compared to their combined interest obligation of 600 billion rupees. When a firm has inadequate profits, it is unable to service its debt, making its loan a potential NPA. All the 85 firms together had gross outstanding loans of 5.04 trillion rupees by end of March 2017, higher than 4.6 trillion by end of March 2016. In the first part of Policy Watch today, we will discuss why there is an increase in the number of firms facing financial stress. Joining me on the program are Arbind Prasad, former Director General, FICCI, and TK Arun, Editor, Opinion Economic Times. I'd like to start with you, Mr. Prasad. Why do you believe that there is a major financial stress as far as some of these corporate companies are concerned?
Well, as you know that a few years back, there was an expectation of high economic growth, and there was a lot of investment, particularly in infrastructure, power, telecom, and those infrastructures, the business is not as high as what was expected. As a result, the profit margin is not adequate to meet the interest rate. Of course, in some cases, there might be some corporate governance issue as well. In addition to all these, we also should realize that the RBI and government has been very proactive in bringing the transparency. So earlier, some of the corporates who could have got the rollover loans from the banks or the financial institutions are now necessarily have to be reported as non-performing assets. So it is a combination of things, weak economic performance, corporate governance issues, and also a focus on transparency and bringing NPAs in the forefront so that we exactly know the non-performing assets and less leeway given to the bankers to carry over those loans which are not generating adequate profit but has likelihood of generating profits when the business cycles improve.
Okay, fair enough. TK Arun, is this trend going to continue? Do you believe, because you've seen it happening over the years, how long is this going to continue for?
I think it will continue for some more time. Now, the debt burden of these companies is the obverse, obviously, of the bad debt problem of the banks.
Yeah.
If somebody is indebted, then somebody is a creditor who is unable to get payments on the loans they have given. Now, the government is trying to resolve this bad debt problem, but it will take at least 18 months to 24 months. So, we are looking at a 2-year window to resolve these problems. Of course, there is another possibility. If the banks can sell their bad loans to asset reconstruction companies, instead of trying to resolve them under the bankruptcy code themselves, then of course, you can have a clean break and the banks will be free to start lending again. But right now, the attempt on the part of the government and the RBI is to try and resolve the loans on the books of the banks directly by the banks themselves, in which case it will take at least 2 years. But suppose you were able to mobilize enough funds in a set of existing or new asset reconstruction companies who could buy these bad loans off the books of the banks, making a clean break, giving the banks, say, 40 paise to 60 paise per rupee of loan they have given out, then banks will be free to start lending again, provided two things. One, there is the willingness on the part of the bank management and on the part of the government, which owns the majority of the banks, which are the public sector banks, to accept this haircut and say this is politically acceptable. And two, they are given fresh capital to provide for the loss that will take place. If these two things happen, then you can start the investment cycle once again. But as Mr. Arvind Kumar said, we had a large investment program during the period from 11 to 2011 onwards, which got stuck for a variety of reasons. we had relied on public-private partnership on an unprecedented scale during the 2004 to 2014 period.
Right.
Many projects went right. So we have created a huge number of new infrastructure assets which are serving this country well. But many projects got stuck. And typically, infrastructure projects have large amounts of debt as a component of financing.
Sure.
So when they got stuck, these companies became unable to service the loans. Many companies are selling their assets. Some of the finest companies in India are getting sort of disbanded before our eyes because they chose to invest in infrastructure.
Indeed. This, of course, the measure that you've spoken about is a long-term measure, you're saying maybe 18 months to 2 years. Mr. Arbind Prasad, what short-term measures can be taken in the immediate future so as to ensure that the problem is dealt with?
Well, when you are discussing about the problems, we should see from two perspectives. One, from cleaning the bank's balance sheet. That is one major goal. And second also is to make the assets productive, the capitals which have been invested, manpower. So now the issue is that we have to look at the reason and causes. So one, as the economist Mr. Arun was pointing out, the lack of resources in many cases because it needs more money and business did not progress to the level. And second, also on the demand sides. For example, let me illustrate with an example of power sector and steel sectors. Now, steel, most of the industries are going bad because of dumping from other countries. So the government has taken some time in past and is likely to take measures which will give boost to domestic industry in terms of consumption within the country. Take the example of power sectors. The power generating companies are not able to sell power primarily because the distributing companies are not financially and managerially very sound. Not because necessarily because the power demand is less, that could also be some cause, but also because most of the distribution companies are in bad shape.
Sure.
So the government has been trying to improve the distribution companies. So I think in addition to taking measures for bankruptcy, insolvency, the government should also take measures to the causes which has resulted in these financial situations.
Right.
Of course, where there is a management problem, management failure or mismanagement, the government need to take, or banks need to take very harsh or suitable actions.
Sure.
But in large number of cases, that may not be the cause.
Okay, fair enough. TK Arun, should the onus always be on the government, or do you believe that the companies too need to do something to clean their books?
Both. But the major thrust has to be from the political authorities. Take the case of power. Now you say distribution companies are in a loss. Why are they in a loss? This is because we have built up a political culture which says farmers should get their power free. And in the name of giving farmers free power, you give them unmetered connections from which small scale industry will draw a line and run their little motor or their little factory. So theft in this country is rampant. Even today, we have installed capacity of nearly 250,000 megawatt. But at the peak of summer demand, we are unable to run more than 150,000 to generate. The rest is lying idle. Obviously, this idle assets that have been built up will lead to non-performing assets, unserviced equity, all kinds of losses and disruption. Now, why are these companies unable to sell this power? Because if the government wants to give subsidy to farmers, then they should put that money up front from the budget and give it to the distribution utility. Secondly, most political parties and politicians think it is their dharma to patronize power theft. If somebody has been stealing power or doesn't pay for the power they consume, that connection should be taken away and the person should be put in jail. But here the politician will interfere and say, no, how can we do this? You should give him some more time. So this kind of nonsense, unless that is ended, utilities will always be in loss. So the onus lies on not just governments, on political parties and politicians to end this culture of stealing power and patronizing theft of power and free power. This must stop. Second thing, many of these projects are overcapitalized. If you require 4 crore per megawatt to install power generation capacity, in India the cost will be 5 crore or 6 crore. There in Punjab, one project is running at 7 crore per megawatt.
Yes.
Why? Why is it being overcapitalized? It is because this is one way in which money is diverted by the promoter, not for his own benefit entirely. Some part is diverted to the political system.
Right.
Our entire democracy runs on such unaccounted contributions from industry, and unless this stops, you will always see projects being overcapitalized.
Sure.
They are taking longer to be constructed. People being forced to take one extra loan because the overcapitalized project will not generate enough revenues to service the larger than necessary loan that he has taken for that project. So he will start another project and take another loan, and then will try to service both.
Right.
Take one more loan. Now, unless you have a system where politics is funded transparently and there is accountability in politics, you will always find leakages on the industry side.
Indeed.
To end this, again, the responsibility is with the politician and the government.
Sure. On that note, I'll have to call it a wrap on this segment of Policy Watch. Thank you to Arbind, Prasad and TK Arun. Well, it's time for a short break now. On the other side, with the GST deadline fast approaching, we'll take a look at how prepared we are for the new tax regime. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Policy Watch with me, Frank Pereira. Before GST pushes the Indian economy towards record growth, businesses must be prepared for the transitional hurdles. Challenges for taxpayers begin with understanding transitional provisions and extends to redesigning supply chain and distribution strategy, forming new business policies and framework, studying the impact on cash flow and profitability, and addressing sector-specific issues. Besides such functional challenges, taxpayers for the first time face technology challenges since government has used technology in an unprecedented manner to facilitate indirect taxation. The GST regime necessitates a high level of synchronization between taxpayers' application, that is an ERP, an accounting or an invoicing software, and the GST system, which without automation would be a difficult task. Timely tax compliance will be critical for business success. Therefore, a robust solution will be required to manage GST compliance. With the GST deadline fast approaching, we will take stock of how prepared we are for the new indirect tax regime. Joining me on the program today are Naveen Kumar, Chairman, Goods and Services Tax Network, and A.K. Bhattacharya, Editorial Director of the Business Standard. Thank you to both my guests for joining me on this edition of Policy Watch. Mr. Naveen Kumar, I'd like to begin with you, of course, with the GST deadline fast approaching, barely a few days to go. How prepared are we for this new indirect tax regime?
We are fully prepared for it. You see, there are two essential prerequisites for a rollout of GST. The first is, migration of the existing taxpayers to the GST database, and the other is making available facility for registration of new taxpayers. Now, talking about the first one, that is the migration part, we started the process in November 2016 when we exposed our the common GST portal to the world, and we invited the existing taxpayers to come to our portal and activate their accounts. I may also inform you that the number of taxpayers of the existing taxpayers of service tax, central excise and VAT is well above 80 lakhs. And these were the people who were supposed to activate their accounts on our portal. So we, at that time, since GST law was not there, we called the drive as enrollment drive. We were enrolling people for GST. And I would like to inform you that from November 2016 to April 2017, 6 months we ran this campaign. And during this period, 60,50,000 people activated their accounts.
Right.
After that, we closed the enrollment process, but we received further requests to reopen because some people had not been able to complete the process.
Sure.
So we again gave them a window from 1st to 15th of June, and another 6 lakh people have come. So out of 80 lakh, 66 lakh taxpayers have already provided their information. They will be getting the provisional certificate of registration shortly.
Okay, fair enough.
Talking about the second one, that is the
I'll just come back to you, Mr. Kumar. Let me bring in Mr.
tax
Bhattacharya as well on this particular
tax
point of
people who are not
migration that you're making, and then I'll come back to you. Mr. Bhattacharya, you know, Mr. Kumar has been talking about migration. Do you believe by the deadline the migration process is going to be completed fully?
Well, you know, I have no doubts that, you know, this is not a serious challenge. Migration of the remaining 20 lakh taxpayers is not going to be a big challenge, particularly in the last 10 days or so, or a week that is left. I don't see that is the problem. And even otherwise, please remember the target date for filing the returns is the 10th of July or 10th of August actually, and then you have got a leeway of one more month leeway.
So
now,
what according to you is the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge to my mind is the IT infrastructure, because Indians, being Indians, will like to file the returns on the last day of that date, which is going to be the 10th of the month. And when you do that, then 8 million people trying to file their returns on an IT network, to my mind, this will be the biggest ever test of India's IT infrastructure. Something might crash, people may just get disillusioned. So there will be tremendous, you know, the challenge would be essentially how to manage the backlash of traders in industry, vociferous as they are, to say that, listen, this is not working, the website is collapsing, I can't file my return, I should not be penalized. So that's one challenge. The other challenge to my mind would be consequent. The prices will rise, but the trade and industry will take advantage of it. I don't expect them to be saints, because everybody in a market scenario will take advantage of it. The government has come out with an anti-profiteering law, which the finance minister says he will not like to use, but then there is a threat of that law. So my, if you are to be briefed, an answer to your question, the biggest challenge would be the IT infrastructure, and the second big challenge would be how to make sure that prices don't see an unusual rise. There will be some increase in prices. One has to budget for that, in my view. It is such a major change in our taxation networks, taxation system, that prices will go up in many commodities. Prices may come down also in some commodities, but there will be a disruptive effect on the marketplace, and it will require humongous, huge management skills on the part of the government and part of GST and Mr. Navin Kumar's outfit to manage that.
Indeed. These are two challenges that Mr. Bhattacharya is highlighting. Mr. Kumar, would you want to respond to that? IT infrastructure and extremely good management skills is what is required, is what he's saying.
Regarding IT infrastructure, I would like to give you some facts and the manner in which we have prepared our infrastructure to meet with this challenge. Indeed, this is a challenge because the behavior of the taxpayers in filing returns is precisely what Mr. Bhattacharya has mentioned. So, you know, we studied the how the taxpayers have been coming to the service tax or VAT, central excise, for filing the returns, and what we found was that roughly 50% of the taxpayers file their returns on the last day, and about 35 to 40% on the penultimate day. So when we were planning for the IT infrastructure, we were deciding the sizing of the, say, storage and the compute capacity. We have taken this into account.
Okay.
We have also surveyed the scenario regarding the number of invoices that the businesses generally generate, because as you know, under the GST law, all the business-to-business transactions have to be reported at the invoice level. So we have done the proper sizing according to that. And the other thing that we are going to do, you know, we have provided an offline tool which the taxpayers can download from our website, and they can, you know, this will help them in uploading their invoice data. They can put their invoice data at their convenience in this offline tool, and whenever they want to upload it, they can use the tool, and this tool can handle 19,000 invoices in one go, and it takes precisely 17 seconds to upload that. Okay. So this tool will help them to upload their invoice data, and it will help us to manage this traffic.
Okay, even the IT infrastructure challenge is being addressed is what you're saying, and we're glad that that is being addressed. You know, Mr. Bhattacharya, you spoke about it being disruptive, the GST being disruptive. So when can we see the real effects of GST, the positive impact of GST?
Well, you know, I mean, the positive impact of GST would be a widening of the coverage of the formal economy. Right now, estimates vary, but a large chunk of India's economic activities don't get captured under the tax net. They are cash transactions. Even in the organized sector, at the dealers level, at the stockist level, there are a large number of tax transactions that don't get caught in the system. With GST, it will be well nigh impossible for anybody selling a hairpin to an air conditioner or to an aircraft without coming under that tax net. Now, clearly, you will see a bump up in India's tax revenue, and the accounting of the size and the extent of India's economic activity. That, I'm sure, over a period of next 1 year or 2 years will result in one, higher tax revenues, not only for the center but also for the states, and plus you will see an improvement in India's GDP size or the GDP growth rate. So I see improvements on both the areas, tax collections plus the GDP size, GDP growth rate. But the bigger impact will be felt on the ease of doing business. Now, as I understand, and Mr. Naveen Kumar can actually elaborate it further, is that the manner in which those 3 returns to be filed has been made so technologically in a friendly way that the first return is generated on the network, and the second and the third generation return is only a click. So if you agree with the input and the output credit, then you click on it and it goes. So my sense is that although the trade and industry is right now worried about the compliance issues, over a period of time, 6 to 8 months or 10 months time, we will see better compliance, improved ease of doing business,
right,
and people complaining far less. And please remember one thing, that the trade and industry will say goodbye for good to the inspector coming and visiting him at odd hours.
Sure.
So that,
sure,
to my mind, is another big gain.
Indeed, indeed. Mr. Kumar, there is this notion that the GST is going to be extremely cumbersome. Do you want to shed some light on that? I mean, do you believe that it's going to be cumbersome? How are you going to make it easy?
Not at all. I think the process is very, very simple and very, very easy. I will explain it in brief. You see, there are 2 kinds of taxpayers. There are some taxpayers who opt for the composition scheme. That is, people who have a turnover less than 75 lakhs, they can opt for composition scheme. For the composition dealer, that return filing is very simple. They have only to give the data of their turnover, and then the tax is applied at the rate of 1%, 2% or 5%, depending on whether they are a trader or a manufacturer or a restaurant. So for the composition dealers, the entries are very few. Now let us talk about the regular dealers. That is, people, they have to file, and also let me mention that the composition dealers file their returns once in 3 months. Whereas the regular dealers are required to file their returns every month. Now here what happens, that all the business to business transactions, the invoice data has to be furnished.
Sure.
Now all that they have to do is to put this data into that offline tool and upload it at the website of GSTN. Thereafter, it is the system that makes their GSTR1, that is the return of outward supplies, that is the returns of sales.
Right. I'm sorry to cut
our system also takes this data and populates it in the purchase register of all the buyers.
Sure.
And then the GSTR2, which is the purchase return, that is created by our system. It's not done by the taxpayer. And finally, when these 2 activities have been completed, the final return, which is GSTR3, that is also generated by the system, and which shows what is the tax liability, what is the input tax credit entitlement, and what is the balance tax that needs to be paid by the taxpayer.
Okay.
He can then make the tax payment at our portal itself. So you see, the only effort that is required to be made by the taxpayer is in providing the information regarding his sales invoices.
Fair enough.
And,
okay, I'm sorry to cut you short because I'm completely out of time on the program.
Very
I'm just going to
simple.
get one
And,
quick reaction from Mr. Bhattacharya to close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Well, you know, I think, as I said, that the IT infrastructure is definitely an area of some concern, and as Mr. Kumar says, that enough attention has been paid. The real concern on the launch rollout of GST would be on the manner in which prices go up or shortages affect the regular supply. So therefore, we need to be little wary of one, if the IT infrastructure functions up to its expectation, and two, prices do not go out of control and supplies are not disrupted.
Okay, on that note, we'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of Policy Watch. Thank you so much to my guests, Naveen Kumar and AK Bhattacharya, for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's all the time we have this time. See you again next time.